What is going on YouTube? Kevin here from TGITechday with what I believe should be the last video in this PC gaming build vlog series. And this video, as the title implies, is going to be talking about the software installation, specifically with my troubleshooting with regards to installing Windows and also dual booting a Hackintosh as well. So you'll see not the problems, because I've ironed a lot of them out, fortunately, but you'll get to see that this is a working dual booted Hackintosh and PC machine. So this is Windows 10. You guys can kind of see that kind of classic iconic Windows 10 background, and I guess I can do, where's that notification thing? Here it is. So there's that and whatnot. So Windows 10, and this was actually much more difficult to install than I had anticipated because there were a lot of things I kind of overlooked. But basically what I had problems with was getting a boot USB to work properly to install the OS on here. And you guys might be sitting there thinking, that should be one of the easiest parts. You just kind of make a boot drive, plug it in, make sure your BIOS is reading from the USB, and then it should go. Yes, I do know that. I know that very much indeed. That's the same exact process you use on a Mac when you're installing a new operating system from scratch. But for some reason it wasn't working, and I've narrowed it down to two different causes, and I've kind of hit two birds with one stone. Not really. I've ironed out both of them at the same time, so I can't really tell which one was the culprit here. But what happened was everyone on the internet and on all these forums was saying, okay, the only thing you really need to do is you need to use Boot Camp Assistant on the Mac and plug the USB drive in and make a bootable install of Windows. And I thought that kind of makes sense because, you know, you're making a boot USB drive when you're using Boot Camp on a Mac as well. So I thought, you know, that could probably work. So I tried that on a 32GB flash drive and plugged it into my PC, tried to boot from the USB, it wouldn't work. The PC refused to recognize it, not recognize it, it recognized it in the BIOS, but it just said no device found when I was trying to boot from the USB. And because the hard drives I had in there were blank and had no bootloaders on them themselves, it just said no devices detected basically, which was very frustrating. So I kept trying it over and over again thinking, okay, maybe I was using it in a USB 3.0 port. Let's try it again in a USB 2.0 port. That wasn't the issue either. And then I realized that it could be the flash drive that is the problem, because I know I tried doing installations before with that flash drive and it just wasn't cooperating. So I thought, okay, so I need something that's bigger than 8GB because that's what they recommended, but I didn't have anything. So I had this 4GB flash drive laying around and I used that instead, and surprisingly it worked. The Windows 7 ISO file that I had was like 3.6 or 3.8GB or something like that. So I thought that maybe 4 wasn't enough to store it because everyone's like, oh, you need some room on the USB for it to for it to extract itself and then do all the installation stuff. But no, 4GB is fine. They probably recommend 8, but whatever, it works for anyone who's wondering and struggling to find anything bigger. That works anyway. So I used that 4GB flash drive and then used the Boot Camp Assistant to try to boot or try to make a bootable USB drive for Windows 7 because that's the ISO that I had a license for. And then plugged into my computer, same issue, no devices found. Tried USB 3.0, USB 2.0 port, nothing was working. So the one thing that I was trying to avoid this whole entire time was reinstalling Windows on my Mac. And something that I guess I didn't and should have mentioned earlier was that I had Windows 10, this version, you know, running on my Mac in boot camp for a long time, for the whole past semester in college. And I was using it fairly regularly to do some random things or to play games on it, whatever. And I know it worked fine. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not going to need the boot camp partition anymore because I knew that if I tried to install it on here, upgrade to Windows 10, there might be some licensing issues and some clashes on the Microsoft servers. So I deactivated it on my computer, and for some reason I decided, hey, it might be a good idea to free up that space and completely wipe the Boot Camp drive itself. Little did I know I still needed that Windows partition on my computer because the next step in alleviating this issue would have been to reinstall Windows on my Mac and then using some sort of utility, I forget what it's called, but I'll leave it in an annotation here, to make a bootable drive from the Windows partition. So keep in mind, I already deleted the Boot Camp partition on my computer, so I was really relieved that I had that space, but I was really frustrated that I had to reinstall it. And that was just making the process a lot longer than I wish it had. But That's what I ended up doing, and then I used that 4 GB flash drive, and then tried installing it, and then it finally booted into this Windows 10 that you see here. Now, the next biggest challenge here was, everything after Windows was installed was pretty much easy going for that. But then I mentioned in my earlier build vlog videos, is I wanted to dual boot this to have a Hackintosh partition as well. And just kind of proof of concept that I actually did this, and relatively properly, I guess. There we go. I'm going to show you the bootloader and it booting into Mac OS X El Capitan at the same time. And this isn't some trick saying, hey, maybe I loaded. That's weird. Yeah, turn off PC, whatever. So when... Okay, it's turning on, good. When I decided that I wanted to dual boot Mac, I realized that would be a little bit more of a challenge just because there's some more software and things with the bootloaders and all that stuff. But the one problem I had was that, well, it first started going off pretty well. And you can see the Clover bootloader right here, and then I'm just gonna boot into Mac real quick here. Okay, so this isn't my laptop that is in boot camp, and then just switching over to the Mac partition. That was the Clover bootloader, as you saw. So it was working pretty well at first. Installed Unibeast on my Mac to make a bootable Clover drive, essentially. Inserting it into, my fan just went crazy for a second. Inserting it into my PC and then trying to run it run the Clover bootloader and have it install itself. And then installing MultiBeast on El Capitan that you see here, and having it try to load itself, or load the Clover bootloader itself, rather than relying on the USB flash drive. However, no matter what I tried, I installed it multiple times, it just wasn't working. I kept getting kernel panics on boot up, and so I would get to that kind of black Apple screen, and then it would just have lines of command, or what seemed like command line code, but was actually a kernel crash, saying that, a bunch of random stuff. Looked up all the errors, couldn't find a problem, and then I looked on, I probably was Tony Mac forum, that I saw a solution. And I was like, this seems kind of like a really far off idea, but it actually seems kind of reasonable if you think about it. And the solution was, if you guys are having problems with your dual booted Hackintosh or your Hackintosh in general, the Clover bootloader USB, if you use Clover configurator, will be able to mount the EFI partition of that flash drive. The EFI partition holds all of the bootloaders basically, and all the important startup files and whatnot. So I've actually copied the EFI folder from Clover here. Can you see it? So yeah, that says Clover. If you can't see it, you probably can't. But I copied the EFI folder from the Clover bootloader USB that I had, and then mounted the computers, as in the Mac's EFI partition, and then just basically copied the Clover bootloader over top of and overwrote the system bootloader so that I could boot into the Clover bootloader without using the USB drive. And that took me forever to figure out, because everyone was saying, oh, you just gotta fix these errors and whatnot, and put these boot flags and all this stuff. I just wasn't getting any success. So the short of it is, I just found that one post, and it made my life wonderful, because I didn't want to have a USB drive hanging out the back of my computer all the time, anytime I wanted to boot into Mac. And it was just a relief that I could have it working just as it should. Now, there are some things on here that aren't quite working. For example, the audio isn't working 100% of the time. It works most of the time, which is good. I just had to figure out a better solution for that. Bluetooth doesn't work, and Wi-Fi doesn't work, but that's because I don't have a wireless chip in my PC at all. I'm currently relying on Ethernet for both the Mac and the PC partitions here. But the Ethernet works fine, so I can get internet, I can do video editing, although video editing is a little bit slow. And I know that a GTX 970 is not the most optimal choice of a GPU for Final Cut Pro X, because Final Cut Pro X doesn't work well with CUDA software, or the CUDA technology that NVIDIA cards have nowadays. So it just seems to render really slowly, but everything else is blazing fast. And the system recognizes everything, which is good. I had some issues where it wouldn't recognize the 970, and it was just uber slow at doing graphics and stuff. But I was able to fix that, kind of everything except Final Cut Pro X, which I'm hoping to iron out. But hey, if you guys have any tips, if you guys are kind of in the same boat as I am, and you're dual booting a Hackintosh and a Mac, or a dual booting a Hackintosh and a PC, and you have problems with Final Cut Pro X, Let me know if you found a solution to make it render a lot faster, because for some reason mine gets stuck on transcoding media for a very long time, even though I have the same exact settings on my Mac, and my Mac can fly through exports and stuff like that. So this video has been a little bit longer, at least I think. So I'm going to pretty much wrap it up here. The whole PC building experience was absolutely great. Of course, it came with a lot more challenges and obstacles than I originally thought, because what seems to be the case is that most YouTubers and other people out there who do a lot of PC build vlogs are like, yeah, you just do this and throw this parts in there and put the software on it and then it'll work fine. You have a PC up in half an hour, which I totally believe if you know what you're doing. However, a lot of those videos, the reason why they make them is not so that people who already know how to build PCs can learn to build them, but it's for newer people or people who are completely brand new to building PCs. So I wish I could have recorded the struggles that I had with installing the OSs on this machine so that you guys could see more candidly just how much or just how involved this process is, especially if you're a first-time builder and don't quite have everything you need up in here with regards to the knowledge of how to troubleshoot things. But hopefully this video series has, kind of inspired you guys. Maybe if you guys were thinking about building your own PC, but were a little bit intimidated, hopefully you'll see that it is challenging the first time through. I'm not gonna lie. If I had to do this again, first of all, I definitely would. I love tweaking stuff. I love working with my hands, and like building things like this is just awesome, especially because it's technology, and I love technology, as you guys know. But doing it again will probably be much faster because, one, I probably would not be recording every step of the way and trying to narrate everything. But on top of that, I just have the previous experience of building this one that I could probably, if I need to help a friend, or if I wanted to build another one in the future, if I wanted to build one for my family members or something like that, I could easily do that in the future, and I would absolutely love the whole process of it. Of course, you would still run into some of those roadblocks that I mentioned in all of these past videos and the ones I just mentioned, but overall, it's a very rewarding experience. And even though I did spend a good chunk of change on this, $1,400 I think it was, or it should be around $1,500 once I get, extra fans and Wi-Fi cards and all that kind of stuff in there. But, a pretty good chunk of change that might be close to double what some people already invested in their PCs. But I'm considering this a great value anyways, because I can do a Mac and a PC and get the benefits of both, and with great speed on both platforms. And I know you could technically do it with a lower end PC as well, but I didn't really want to compromise on a lot of stuff. The processor I got is plenty powerful for what I wanted to do with regards to video editing. The GPU is great for games, although slightly crashes sometimes in some of my games. But it's great enough that I am definitely, happy with what I've got here. So this video's already been long enough. I'm gonna wrap it up here. If you guys have any tips for alleviating some Hackintosh issues, or specifically with Final Cut Pro 10, or if you guys have any questions in general about building a gaming PC, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll be happy to hear what you got to say. So that does it for this video and this video series. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe for more content in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video.